A boy named Guts was born on the battlefield, his mother was killed and a soldier named Gambina picked him up as a baby. From childhood, Guts was taken as an assistant to various battles so that at least some benefit would come from him. He was beaten many times by older soldiers. To become stronger, Guts trained a lot. Growing up, Guts ran away from his adoptive father as they wanted to kill him. Many years later, Guts became a mercenary who helped in attacks for money. One day he was in a detachment of mercenaries who stormed the fortress, but a knight named Basuza stood in front of them. It was rumored that he could kill 30 warriors with one blow, because of which none of the mercenaries except Guts wanted to fight him. With his axe, Basuza broke his helmet, but in response he was wounded in the stomach, after which Guts finishes him off with a blow to the head. After the capture of the fortress, the commander of the offensive paid him money for his help and offered him a permanent place in the army. But Guts, having taken the money, did not listen to him and left. In the field, he was noticed by Griffith's squad, another mercenary whose members decided that they could rob the swordsman, but as soon as they attacked, he immediately kills two. Griffith sent his best mercenary in the squad, Casca, to help them, but even she could not cope with him. Then the commander of the detachment himself appeared, who with one blow was able to severely injure Guts. When he woke up, he realized that he was in a mercenary camp. Griffith approached him, handed him the sword and asked him to follow him. Griffith said that he wants to see Guts in his squad as a warrior, but he refuses this and offers a duel. If Guts wins, he will kill Griffith, and if vice versa, he can do anything with him. During the short battle, Guts began to realize that he was facing a warrior many times stronger and more experienced than him. Falling down the hill, a fist fight broke out, during which Griffith was able to grab Guts' arm and force him to admit defeat. At night, he was thinking about his fight when he suddenly heard that an assassination attempt was being prepared on him. It was conceived by Corcus, who was trying to rob Guts. They were about to attack, but Casca intervened and drove them away. The next night, Griffith's squad, which is called the Falcon Squad, prepares to attack the enemy camp. The commander tells his plan and puts Guts in charge of the rear. Casca realized that Guts was given such an important role because the commander trusted him. The detachment successfully reached the camp and set fire to it. For Guts, an enemy detachment set off in pursuit and he decided to lead them along. During the fight, the pursuers were able to injure his horse, which made him vulnerable, but Griffith saved him from death. He helped him to get on his horse and took him to the fortress where the rest of the detachment was waiting for the pursuers along with the cannons. After repelling an enemy attack, the squad throws a feast in honor of the newcomer, who gradually begins to join their team. In the morning, Guts comes up to Griffith and finds him washing himself. All his attention is riveted on the necklace. Griffith says that this is Behemoth and the one who received it is destined to rule the world, giving his flesh and blood. And then the squad attacks another castle. During the fight, Guts contemplates his first foray and his adoptive father Gambin. During one of the raids, Gambina was badly wounded and went through the roof, which is why he attacked his adopted son at night. In an attempt to defend himself, Guts unwittingly kills his stepfather. Members of the detachment burst into the ward and for this they decide to kill him, but Guts manages to escape on a horse. After capture Castle, Guts was promoted, appointing him the commander of the strike force. 3 years have passed since these events. The band of the Falcon has become even stronger. Now they serve the King of Midland, who knights Griffith. Extremely dissatisfied with this local commanders, but they understand that they cannot cope without the Falcon Squad. After the ceremony, they are given a new mission to capture the enemy's supply depot. It is guarded by the Knight Adon, who escapes when Griffith's squad breaks into the vault, but he managed to prepare a trap. The vault was filled with explosives, which were set on fire during the retreat, but despite such a setup, no one was injured in the Falcon detachment. In the evening, Adon reports to his boss, General Bakan, that he was able to destroy the Falcon Squad, but the general recognized the lie in his words and therefore sends him back. At this time, the king is going to send a detachment on an important task, namely the capture of the castle, but the military leaders are unhappy with this, who are now plotting to kill Griffith. Guts' strike force besieges the main tower, but the strong warrior Zoth Nosferatu, who was considered defeated, fights on the side of the enemy. To the battle with 50 warriors of the Guts detachment went to him, but no one returned back, so he decides to go there himself. Entering the tower, Guts finds this warrior and immediately starts the battle. The Nosferatu turns out to be the strongest enemy that Guts has faced, and in order to kill him, he has to use his long blade to the fullest, thanks to which he was able to break the monster's sword and injure him badly. But he reincarnates into a stronger form. Now even Guts cannot do anything to him and is already losing all his strength, but at the last moment Griffith and his crossbowmen intervened, who distracted the monster. Griffith rushes to Guts and only together they manage to deprive the monster of one arm, but this was not enough. Griffith is knocked out. Nosferatu was already ready to finish off Griffith, but after seeing Behemoth, the monster changes its plans. He turns to Guts and prophesies the future for him. If Griffith fails to achieve his goal, then Guts will be destined to die, and after these words the monster flies away. The castle has been captured, causing the king to want to promote Griffith. After healing, Griffith asks Guts how they escaped, to which the swordsman points to Byheleth. Well, he didn't say anything about the prophecy. Instead, Guts asks why he saved him 3 years ago, trying to figure out his ulterior motive. But there was no reason. Griffith saved him because he wanted to. Their conversation is interrupted by the king. He directly says that the commanders do not like the Falcon Squad, and all because they are commoners, but the king himself does not see a problem in this, because their squad is doing much better than the royal ones. The next day, Adon explains to the soldiers that the fortress in which they are now impregnable, because the only way to get into it is a narrow bridge with a bunch of soldiers, and it is this fortress that the Falcon Squad will have to capture. Members of Guts' strike force used ropes to ferry horses and supplies across the river. Now, in order to attack the fortress, they do not need to enter this bridge. While the rest of the Falcon Squad stood up on the hill for attention, Adon realized that this was a trap designed to bring all the guards to the bridge, so he ordered them to be ignored. At this time, Guts came in from the rear and said that their commander-in-chief was about to arrive, that he had a message for their commander. The plan succeeded and the gates were opened, after which the main strike force ran out of the forest. Since no one thought that Guts was an imposter, he and his team managed to clear the bridge and give Griffith a signal to attack. Adon realized that he had lost, so he was running away again, which means that another fortress was captured. After such a successful operation, Griffith receives the status of an earl, but the younger brother of the king, Julius, did not like it very much. For him, the last straw was the change in the accompanying detachment of the king during the spring hunt. Instead of the squad of Julius, the detachment of the Falcon will be the escort. It was then that Julius decided to kill Griffith. His advisor named Foss hinted that stray arrows can often fly on the hunt, and it is better to make one such arrow poisoned. On the hunt, Griffith notices that Princess Charlotte does not like being here, so he decides to talk to her. During the conversation, a wild boar runs out of the bushes, which frightens the princess with her appearance, and she runs away into the forest. Griffith starts chasing her, followed by an assassin. He dismounted from his horse to stop and calm the princess's horse, after which he was shot dead by the killer. At least the mercenary thought so. In fact, the arrow, although it pierced the armor, was stopped by Byheleth. Griffith realized that it was an assassination attempt. Now he and the squad have to find out who is behind this. Suspicion fell on Julius, as he was seen very close and watched everything that was happening. Griffith then asks Guts to kill the king's brother. He determined what kind of poison was on the arrow. Such poison is very expensive and rare, so usually the killer will not be able to get it. He also bribed the maid to find out everything. Guts starts spying on Julius, who is training his son. After training, the father went to his chambers, where Guts later came. Julius did not even have time to grab his sword, as he was killed, and it was at that moment that his son came to them. Guts could not leave the witness, and therefore deals with him. At this time, Griffith was at the ball. Guts meets him during a conversation with Charlotte. He tells her that he has no friends in his squad because they all rely on his dream. A person who can become his friend must have his own dream, for which he should live. They are overheard by Guts, who is offended by these words. At this moment, a maid bursts into the conversation between the princess and Griffith, who reports the death of Julius and his son. The next day, Griffith goes on a new mission, a battle with Adon's squad. Right before he leaves, the princess gives him the Godstone talisman, which shows her sympathy. After that, her mother makes a stern remark to her, saying that the princess cannot communicate, let alone give something to ordinary people. Upon arrival, the battle began. Adon himself drove up to Casca, saying that a woman can never be considered a knight, so he wants to kill her. During the fight, Casca was cornered and Adon was about to kill her when Guts intervenes. He was able to deflect his strong blow with one blow, break his helmet and throw him off his horse. Guts, thinking that the enemy no longer has strength, is distracted by Casca and at that moment receives an arrow with which he falls into the water. The wound was not fatal. Therefore, Guts was able to pull her ashore and revive her by doing artificial respiration. But because of the fever, she never woke up. Because of the beginning rain, Guts could not return to the squad, so they spent the night in a cave. Waking up, Guts asks why Casca joined the Falcon Squad, to which Casca began to tell his story. She was born in a distant poor village, past which a nobleman was passing. He liked the helmet, and therefore he offered her family to make their daughter their servant, promising her a happy life, but it turned out that he ransomed her to make him his slave and rape her. However, Griffith intervened at the last moment. He gave Casca the sword with which she killed the nobleman, and after that, she wanted to join his squad. The Falcon Squad then intervened in a territorial conflict started by the local ruler, Governor Genam, who had a bad reputation for recruiting children as servants. combatants but in fact using them as slaves. According to Casca, after one of the battles, Griffith slept with the governor. She asked her commander, why did he do this? The reason was simple: Griffith needed money to support the army. Casca also reveals why she was mad at Guts all this time. During the first meeting, Griffith insisted on his joining the detachment, so he did not invite anyone else new. At night, Casca and Guts set out in search of their team, but Adon was waiting for them with his squad. He said that the swordsman was a big problem for him, and that's why he directed his entire remaining squad against them. This did not stop Guts and Casca, so Adon called his brother Samson. His weapons are able to break even logs, and his armor is 3 times thicker than that of other soldiers. Guts uses his sword to deflect the opponent's weapon, which eventually breaks under pressure, disarming the enemy. The swordsman kills him, after which he tells Casca to leave him and run because she is sick and cannot fight. Despite the fact that Guts distracted the entire squad, yet several soldiers followed Casca. They were able to grab her and were about to have fun with her, but at the last moment she was able to stick a branch in the soldier's eye and escape. By a lucky chance, she stumbles upon her squad, which saves her. During this time, Guts continues to fight the Adon Wars, which he fought until dawn. He was found barely alive and immediately carried back to the camp. In the evening, Jodo, Griffith's confidant, tells Casca that all the nobility were against searching for her and Guts, but it was Griffith who insisted on finding them, saying that they are the most important members of his squad. Also, Jodo gives his very rare and expensive medicine, saying that Guts it is more needed. Guts then reveals that his battle with 100 soldiers is nothing compared to what Casca and Griffith do for the squad. He argued that everyone in the squad has their own goal, but all these goals are alien to Guts. He does not know what he wants from life, and perhaps soon he will leave their squad to go further. Griffith returned from a military meeting where the king instructed the detachment to capture the castle, which is owned by Jean. It was besieged by the White Tiger Knights, and this is one of the strongest armies, but they could not succeed and were defeated by the army of the castle. At this time, Adon is deprived of his position, after which General Boscan visits Ganon, saying that they will soon fight the Falcon squad, adding that he needs Griffith alive. The day of the battle has come. Griffith divided his 5,000-strong army into 2 formations. The plan was for the first formation under Guts to squeeze into the enemy army and deal with its commanders. During the battle, the governor realizes that Boscan can disobey the order and kill Griffith, so he personally intends to advance to the battlefield for command, destroying part of the castle's army. Griffith ordered a retreat and regroup. Boscan figured out his plan and was not going to go in pursuit, but then Ganon intervenes. He takes command, after which he once again orders to deliver Griffith alive and pursue his squad. The entire army went in pursuit of Griffith, leaving the castle almost unguarded. This was taken advantage of by the second formation under the command of Casca, who managed to break into the castle almost without resistance. During the capture, Casca again meets with Adon, who, despite being removed from his post, was able to lead the squad and surround the second formation. A battle broke out in the castle, which resulted in Casca being able to corner Dawn, saying she couldn't do it sooner because she wasn't well. Realizing his hopelessness, the former commander admitted his mistakes and began to ask for mercy. Casca let her guard down, which he took advantage of and shot her with a crossbow. Adon drove her into a corner, but Casca was able to part him and dodged the blow with a spear, after which she cut his face. At this time, outside the castle walls, the first formation is fighting with the main army. Guts single-handedly deals with a large number of soldiers, but General Boscan appears in front of him. The battle of 2 strongmen begins. The whole fight was complicated by the deplorable state of Guts' weapon because his sword was badly worn out. At this moment, he realizes that he has never been so close to death. Realizing that Gatsu will not cope with the general without a good weapon, Zot throws his sword at him, which determines the outcome of the entire battle. After the death of the general, Ganon finally saw that his castle had already been captured and that he and his soldiers were surrounded on 2 sides. The entire army of the castle scatters, leaving their governor, to whom Griffith approaches and kills him. In Midland, high-ranking officials learned about the capture of the castle by Griffith. Now he can be promoted to the rank of general, which became the reason for another assassination attempt. The decision was made to poison Griffith, led by Councillor Foss and supported by the Queen herself. Griffith's detachment returned to Midland, where the people welcomed them as heroes. At this time, the Queen and Foss were preparing for today's ball, at which they planned to poison Griffith. During the ball, Casca asks Guts why did he come because he missed points earlier, to which Swordsman replied that he wants to see what Griffith achieves in the future. At this moment, Casca realizes that Guts wants to leave their squad. Without having time to talk normally, the king appears with his speech, who is going to give the Falcon squad the title of White Knights, and appoint Griffith himself the Earl and commander of all the Midland armies. And early in the winter, Guts leaves the Falcon squad. Casca notices this and runs after him, even though he wants to see what Griffith achieves, but he does not want to live under someone else's dream. They are approached by Jodo and Corcus, who go with him to the tavern to discuss everything, and Casca decides to call Griffith. Guts tells them his little backstory about how he killed his stepfather as a child, and from that moment on he did not try to find out anything other than the fight. Guts wants to be on a par with Griffith, namely to achieve something himself. Corcus does not understand him, because according to him in life you always have to make compromises, after which he leaves, and Jodo tells his story, swords, which is why he now owns them best in the detachment, but he could not learn anything else. He went after Griffith, because he saw his leader in him, and in order not to consider himself somehow special. After these words, Jodo decides to spend Guts. Leaving the city, they are met by Casca, Pepin, Corcus, and Rickert. They all came to see Guts on his way, but Griffith intervenes. He reminds the swordsman that because of the duel he lost, Guts belongs to him and now it is necessary to fight. Before the battle, Guts realizes that their duel shows how valuable they are to each other. Griffith sees that Guts doesn't want to fight, but he just can't let him go. Guts took this fight as disrespectful, while Griffith was ready to either keep him with him or kill him. The outcome of the battle was decided instantly. Guts broke Griffith's sword with one blow, after which he said goodbye and left. Griffith was not ready for this. This defeat hit him hard. Disappointed, he then went to the princess's quarters and spent the night with her. This was noticed by the maid and called the guards. On this day, Griffith was deprived of his post and sentenced to torture. Guts wandered around the cities and participated in tournaments. After one of these he decided to look at the blacksmith Godo, who forged a new sword for him. The blacksmith says that the sword can be used to determine who the owner is and who he fought. About the Guts sword, we can say that it is held by a person who does not see his fate. For some time, he lived with Godo, improving his fighting skills, at the same time thinking about his words about a man who does not see his fate. Guts asks why Godo works as a blacksmith. He does it because he doesn't know anything else. All his life he wanted to become the best in his field, but when he became, he was already an old man. After a year of training and living with a blacksmith, Guts goes on, but before leaving, a messenger arrives to the blacksmith, who talks about robbers hiding in the mountains, mentioning that Casca is their commander. Guts immediately went in search of them. He came just at the moment when the bounty hunters attacked the camp and helped repel their attack. Jodo told Guts about that day. They were waiting for Griffith when suddenly they were attacked by the Midland army, and all because Griffith was accused of treason. Jodo says that they planned to release him from captivity and that Guts joined them is a great success. Griffith was constantly tortured during this time. The executioner says that the king strictly ordered to keep Griffith alive for another 3 years, after which he rips Behemoth from his neck and throws him into the drain. Guts and Casca move away from the camp where she attacks him. Casca blames him for all the troubles. After all, the commander could not go further without him. Hearing this, Guts missed a blow and was wounded. Only by injuring him, Casca realized that he was not to blame for anything, and Griffith himself all this time wanted to break into the throne through the heart of the princess. But for her it was unbearable because Casca loved him, but she understood that they were not destined to be together. She came to the edge of the cliff and said that she was tired and made a jump, but Guts managed to save her and on emotions they kissed and slept. Guts fell in love with Casca. The next day, he says that he will free Griffith and put the squad on their feet, after which they set off to rescue the commander. Griffith had a vision where he saw black silhouettes that say they are his blood relatives. Arriving at the tower of the dungeon, the detachment deals with the soldiers and descends to Griffith, where they discover a barely living body. They cut his tendons and cut off his tongue. They did not expect to see Griffith in such a state. This caused great anger in Guts. Due to the fact that they were distracted by Griffith, they did not notice how they fell into a trap and the door to the cell was closed by the executioner, who had already called all the guards here. This door is 4 times stronger than ordinary doors, but with all his anger, Guts took it down with a sword and stabbed the executioner. All that remains for them now is to break through with the fight along with Griffith. As a result, they managed to go through a secret passage to the cemetery, where a wagon was waiting for them, but the guards had already gone after them. The army of the king had already begun to catch up with them. Fighting off the army, the detachment stopped in the field, not knowing what to do next. They all hoped that by returning Griffith, everything would be as before. Guts, during a conversation with Jodo, says that he wanted to help the squad and save Griffith, but then he will again leave to look for his way. At this moment, the former members of the strike squad, whom Guts commanded before, come to him and ask him to take them with him, and only now Guts realized that he had been mistaken all this time. He searched all his life for this detachment, from which which he left. He realized this when he lost everything. While sleeping, Griffith had another vision, in which he saw himself whole and unharmed, pointing to his dream, a white castle. He then sees himself as a child running towards the castle. Griffith wakes up and starts his wagon in pursuit of himself. Guts and the rest of the squad saw this and ran to save Griffith. The wagon runs into a stone and overturns. Finally, Griffith comes to his senses. There was a sharp stone nearby and Griffith decides to commit suicide, but in the water he finds his Byheleth, which the executioner threw into the sewage. The whole squad was rushing towards him. Griffith began to understand that something terrible was about to happen and tried to scream so that no one would come up to him, but he could not due to the fact that his tongue was cut off. The detachment runs up and at that moment an eclipse occurs, and various monsters began to appear around. Guts runs up to him and at that moment Byheleth is activated, after which the whole earth and sky are covered with bloody faces. Casca commands the entire squad to get into battle formation. At this moment, the monsters say that a feast has come during the eclipse, and now 4 guardian angels will appear. And at the moment when Griffith acquired Byheleth, he had the right to become the 5th angel. All the demons were once humans who tried to use Byheleth, but in order for Griffith to become one of the angels, a sacrifice is needed, which will be the Falcon Squad. Griffith has a choice. He can sacrifice them to become a deity or refuse and everything will be as before. He sees a vision again, in which he, being a little boy, runs to his dream of a white castle with his friends, but for some reason they are nowhere to be found. He got lost and asked his grandmother for directions, who showed him the right path, but going there, he didn't. There was a castle. Instead of a castle there was a mountain of corpses, and the grandmother says that this is the only way to his dream. For this he must step over those who fought for his dream, or fall with them. After these words, the grandmother points to his friend, who was mortally wounded, and then he sees the rest of the squad members, who have long been killed. In a sense, Griffith killed everyone, because if not for his dream, they would not have fallen during the battles. Grandmother says that he has already gone through a lot, but he still has to go through for the sake of his dream, and if he wants to go back, he will be next to those who are already dead. Griffith realizes his position and makes a decision. He sacrifices his entire squad, after which he is consumed by faces. All party members receive a brand that serves as a mark for monsters. Guts tried to break the faces and get to Griffith to save him, but he had already begun his transformation. Meanwhile, Pepin sacrifices himself, drawing the monsters to himself, while Jodo takes Casca and tries to lead her away, but their horse falls into a trap and Jodo are killed. The monsters have surrounded Casca and are going to have fun with her before they kill her. The last one left alive is Guts, who continues to fight, but he was also surrounded. The monsters were already ready to kill Casca and Guts, but at that moment Griffith ended his rebirth and appeared before them in a new guise. He grabbed Casca and began to rape him in front of Guts. This infuriated him. He began to fight off the monsters with all his might. In order to save Casca, he had to cut off his hand and the monster pierced Guts' eyes. He did not manage to escape, and it remained to watch how his beloved was being raped. Guts was saved by the Dark Knight. If you liked it and want to continue this story, then like and write a comment, and then a continuation will be released on the channel.